So I have a client testimonial here that I'm going to share with you guys. It's kind of a long one, so I'm gonna put it up on the screen and also stop and explain what was going on evidentially as we go. This client sent me this feedback message within 24 hours of her session, so that kind of just validates what I'm always saying, like the things you're given in a reading that you don't immediately recognize are probably worth finding. And here it goes. Thank you, Miss S. I really appreciate this very detailed feedback message. She says, "Hey, Andy, it was a pleasure sitting for my second reading with you yesterday. I wanted to update you on a few things I couldn't place during our reading. Sorry this is so long. You mentioned earlier on in the reading about a nickname like Sissy or Missy. It didn't ring a bell to me at the time, but my mom's maternal aunt Virginia was nicknamed Sissy. Sissy's sister, the older one who was coming through, Aunt Drusilla, was born in July. She also had a funny nickname, Sada. Both were mentioned, all being on my mother's side. I had to do some digging for some other dates, but I was also able to find the living person who was directly related to me and my mother, with a birthday on the 7th day of a month. It was my cousin, my mom's nephew. I had pretty much all of my maternal cousins' birthdays on my cheat sheet, with that exception. You mentioned a Haley during that time and it didn't ring a bell, but again, my first cousin on my mother's side has a daughter with that name." So that was the first paragraph. She was given some names, a birth month, a birthday, and some indication as to where that information would fit, as in male or female, living or departed, and which side of the family it was from, mom's side in this case. And again, within 24 hours, she was able to nail down who was coming through and which living people they were referring to. I also think it's a really cute detail that nicknames were used, not legal names, and departed people seem to have strategically chosen the one cousin she didn't have on her list. Which, if you leave cousins off your list, this will probably happen. Departed people know what you included, and they will sometimes do that on purpose. Kind of cute. Anyway, next part says, "You mentioned a Christine and an August 2nd around that person. I wasn't sure entirely, but all that was coming through around the same time as you mentioned tacos and alcohol. I was with my friend Kristen for that night, with the tacos and the alcohol. I asked her if August 2nd meant anything to her, and she said it was her stepdaughter's birthday. They got a call a few hours later from this teenager and realized that they would be taking custody of them. I'm still not entirely sure if that fit, but it was definitely a coincidence, if not directly for her." So to explain what was going on there, it sounds like she was given a name and a significant date. And the fact that there was something major going on for that friend on an evening that she spent with that friend, it makes sense that departed people would acknowledge the situation her friend was going through and the people involved in it, just to say, hey, we're paying attention to your social circle and everything going on with the people in it. That's very normal. So the next part says, "The first older male that came through was Ron, my husband's grandfather. I placed that during the reading, but what helped me get there is when you stopped and he said, 'I'm done,' and held up your hands to signify what he was saying about not taking up any more time of the reading. That's what made me realize that that's who you were speaking to. I can't remember exactly what you said, he said, but it was at that moment I was like, duh, of course that's Ron. I told my husband about it and he was like, yes, that's totally his personality." So to recap what was going on there, a gentleman had come through, he gave a name, which was his own name, and he was doing a lot of talking. He took up quite a bit of time, and he kind of went, "I won't take up any more of your time," and took a step back. And it was probably the body language and the self-awareness of how much time he had taken up that jogged her memory as to who he was. So if a person was polite and had self-awareness in life, they're going to probably use that to define themselves when they're coming through to a medium. So the next portion says, "You mentioned Florida. I had an aha moment when we got off the call. We are taking our first cruise in July and the port is in Miami, Florida." So yeah, they'll mention upcoming vacations just to let you know that they know where you're going to be. Next part says, "You also mentioned a male with an RO name like Rob, and I didn't realize till after we were done with my reading that during our reading my father Ronald had come home. Not sure if that is what was meant for or not because no further reference was made." Yeah, so if someone is in your house at the time of your reading, or if they are coming into your house while you're being read, or even if they call, text, or email you, during the time of your reading. They could easily come up in the reading. They just do that, again, to validate that they're right there with you. Next part says, you say not to get too bogged down with who you want to talk to or hear from because it can affect the clarity of the reading. And you are 100% right, of course. I had a chat with someone a few days prior to our reading and asked for him to come through. He didn't, but I think I know why. You even mentioned me talking aloud to my past loved ones directly in our reading. So this part of the feedback message is really interesting because it kind of illustrates something that it's important for people who get readings to keep in mind, which is that our willingness to put information where it fits and our ability to recognize that a person might not come through with the information we're expecting will help us place information more easily and get more information. In that, she made a verbal invitation to a departed person to join the reading in advance of the reading, right? So the fact that that was mentioned would kind of be that departed person's way of saying, hey, message received, meaning that that departed person was present, and they may not have provided any additional evidence or information to indicate that, but the fact that that conversation was mentioned would be that person saying, hey, I'm here. And then the next bit there says, there were so many things you hit on that were happening around me, things I'm dealing with in my life that you clearly would have no way of knowing, right down to a sweet treat I ate not long before our session and a show I was watching just before. I obviously knew you have this amazing gift already from our first reading, but it's still pretty amazing to witness firsthand all over again. There's some things I can't quite place, and I know from the last reading it can take some time to have everything fall into place. I will update you with more as it comes up. Best, Miss S. And then she sent me another follow-up message about an hour after this, so I'm going to pull that up. She says, one more update. My mom and I have been trying to look through records and such. The older female who passed with the AL name is my mom's aunt Alfreda. Man, her aunts on both sides were coming through strong. So that's why I always say, take good notes during your reading, cross-check that information with other living people around you and whatever documentation you have available, and then also commit to paying attention to events that unfold after your reading, usually 6 months to a year. That's how long it'll take for things from your reading to fall into place. And that's kind of the fun part. It kind of turns life into an Indiana Jones movie where you're looking for clues. So just to recap what we had going on, just in this testimonial, we had legal names, we had nicknames, we had birth months, we had birthdays, we had locations, we had 3 references to food and beverages, and we had references to circumstances that unfolded after a person's passing, and a departed person coming through to reference things that happened after they died let us know that they are kind of omnisciently aware of everything that's happened and they haven't missed out on anything since they passed. And that's what mediums mean when they say evidence. I hope that helps.